talking to Mike, which is kind of fun. Do you want headphones,
All right.
or do you want to do the headphones? Or
No, I think I'm all right.
All right. So
Yeah.
I'm Chase. So this is for Alex. This is for sexuality class.
All right.
So I'm Chase. This is Devin.
I'm Devin McNamara.
Devin, why don't you talk about yourself? I'm like, what do you do as a law enforcement?
Currently, I am a sergeant at the Hennepin County Crime Lab in the crime scene unit. I have been overseeing the crime lab since January of 2021. Prior to that, I was a detective in our general investigations unit and found special interest in our sex trafficking kind of line of work, if you will, unit. And so I was there starting in 2019. Prior to that, I was a crime scene investigator. I was there, as just a regular crime scene investigator from January of 2010 until May of 2019. And then before that, I worked in juvenile courts for about 9 months, 10 months. And then I was in jail as a licensed peace officer for 3 years. And then I was a detention deputy, which is an unlicensed peace officer.
Okay.
Like more of a jailer for about a year. That's
So
kind of working backwards.
No, I get that. So what drew you in initially? Like, what got you into, like, what made you want to become a law enforcement officer?
My mom, she, on Friday nights and Saturday nights, we would watch Rescue 911, oh my gosh, all these crime shows. I'm trying to think of the other ones that were on Friday nights. But that's all we watched growing up was murder mysteries and crime shows. So that's what I do now.
I got lucky growing up a little farther than you did. I fell in love with it just by watching like Lone Star Law, a lot of like outdoorsy. Because I mean, being a cop, it's always like city, a lot of outdoors. But I've always fell in love with the getting to connect with people outside of the city. Make sure that the people in the rural communities understand like we're also there to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I understand like has it been a stressful time since of 2019 since you've gotten up from juvenile to then getting to court and then being a jailer, then all that other stuff, and then getting to this where now you're working with the forensics teams?
I would say 2020 was a big turning point in law enforcement just in general after the George Floyd ordeal happened. So yeah, it definitely, the stress has gone up. I've had 3 kids. I had one in 2015, one in 2016, and then one in 23. And I would say 15 and 16 were also pretty interesting years in the sense that every time I came back from having a baby, I felt like law enforcement, there had been negativity shifted towards law enforcement. And so even I think back, it's almost 10 years ago now, things started to shift,
I remember. I was doing online school in George Floyd, and I just felt bad because like it was like a both party fault. As the evidence came around and people started seeing how bad he was, and then seeing the talks, people started really hounding on police officers. I mean, I gotta say thank you for continuing with the job. I get how it can be hard time to time, and I just understand like how it feels. Like, what advice would you give for people like me who are interested in continuing that kind of line of work?
I would say brace yourself. Be prepared, be prepared for the unknown. And you really have to, I think, law enforcement's a calling. You can start it as a job, but I think really nowadays, if you're going to be successful in this position, it has to be a calling. You really have to be passionate about the work that you do because it's been pretty rocky these last couple of years. But we need people like you that are drawn to the profession and just really interested in providing a service to the community.
Well, so if you had to say into a new recruit who really wants to go, what kind of quality of an officer or of someone who wants to become, what kind of qualities do you look for in someone like that?
We need honest people. We need somebody with a lot of integrity, hardworking, critical thinking skills are very important, and I think that these last, a lot of new recruits that we're seeing, not everybody has critical thinking skills, common sense, and I think that you also have to be able to take criticism well. If you're going to be better and be the best, the best version of yourself, take criticism,
Mm-hmm.
and be coachable. You're part of a team, a different team now than maybe in the past, right? If you're a new officer, you're going to be part of the law enforcement team, and it is a team, and it's a small group of people. So be a coachable player to that team.
Okay. How does that? So how does that work from someone who's going into like coming from a new recruit, then going into something like like a what do you call a vehicle in your line of work? Because I heard a lot of TV shows call it like the shop or the engine, or what do you call your vehicles?
Like
that
a
you use?
squad.
Like a squad.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like a squad car. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I was very interested because like a lot of TV shows get it wrong. I'm like, well, it'd actually be kind of cool to call like this is my shop. I like my squad car.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you give
I
your
mean,
vehicles
I get
names,
that.
or is that just a television thing?
I don't. I have not been a part of that. None of the units I've been in. I think, in detectives maybe more so. We would give because we had unmarked cars,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't really ever good. I mean, we all had like gray, silver, and black squads, and now they've added more fun colors to
All right.
the fleet, and so I think that then opens up the opportunity to be more creative with naming cars. But I was not a part of that, and now I drive a marked car, so
Mhm.
it's just kind of lame.
I guess you call it Betsy. This is Betsy. This is my car, Betsy. So
Yeah.
so what does like your average day look like? What does your daily like role looks like as a detective?
So as a supervisor now, do you want me to go into when I was a detective?
Oh,
or-
you can do both.
Okay,
If
so
you
like
can do both, that would be awesome.
when I was a detective, it was kind of just a 8 to 4 type job.
Okay.
I would drive into the office, and so every day when I was a detective, you were assigned as like a house mouse, which
Okay.
means that you were responsible for the calls that came in from within our agency or agencies that we served throughout the night that were not what you would call like a priority one call.
Okay.
So you'd kind of just pick up some of those newer calls. They would get assigned and divvied up throughout. But if you were the house mouse, you were responsible from 8 to 4 that day. There would be a detective on call as well, and those hours were from 4 until 8 a.m. So they would take anything that came in after hours, would go to the on-call detective. So then during the day, you would really just work on cases. If that meant going out to pull video, interviewing somebody, writing search warrants, writing subpoenas, some of that more detail-oriented work and tedious work, sitting behind a desk, pulling bank account information. Sometimes depending on where you're pulling video from, you have to pull search warrants for that. If you have, you're looking for a search warrant for certain things, you'd kind of do that, and mostly just go talk to people, depending on the type of calls that you had. Everybody is interviewed. The victim, the suspect, anybody that saw anything, a neighbor, a parent, a child, all of those. So just kind of facilitate those types of things. And then usually kind of go out and with two people, you grab a partner and go kind of do your thing and then help with theirs.
Okay.
You'd interview with two people almost all the time if you could. So somebody would be the primary, another person would be secondary, which is good when you're having a conversation with somebody. There's somebody to write notes and somebody to ask follow-up questions that maybe the primary isn't thinking of. So that's kind of the detective side of it. And then if you were the on-call, anything that came in after. So you kind of have your phone glued to your hip, anything that came in after hours they were calling you for. So that was that. And then if you had to respond, you had to respond.
Gotcha.
I always liked to, when I was, if I was getting called after hours in the detective line of work, ask the deputies or the cops that you were talking to, you really want to put that on them. You don't want them to just default and call a detective because they want you to give them the answers. You kind of have to say, have you read the state statute? What you have, does that meet the state statute? Can you put those elements of the crime into your report? Put that responsibility on them. That's how we're going to build good officers and deputies that want to maybe go into investigations or just be more confident in their own work. So as a crime scene sergeant, I am on call every other week. I
Okay.
have one partner, and we together oversee 13 CSIs.
Okay.
We operate 24/7, 365. So we have generally 2 to 4 CSIs working the road at one time.
Okay.
And they respond to any call within the Hennepin County area, excluding Minneapolis.
Okay.
And what they do is they go out and collect physical evidence. So they collect DNA, fingerprints, firearms, cartridge cases, footwear impressions, and tool mark impressions.
Okay.
So they receive calls from dispatch and go out to that. Being the sergeant, I work day shift primarily, so I usually work 7:30 to 5:30.
Okay.
I have my own car because we're responsible for so much call-in.
Mm-hmm.
My partner and I each operate our own squad car. And really when we get to the office, if there's anything going on that we need to go out to, we'll just check in with the CSIs on scene, see if we should swing by, see what they have. But usually it's a lot of just administrative work. I work in an accredited crime lab, so our accrediting body is ANAB. So that means that we follow policies of checks and balances. And with that comes a lot of extra administration work. So really we're downtown doing that most of the time.
And you say like, and what is ANAB? Can you tell us like what that means?
I should be able to tell you what that means. The American National Academy, I can't think of what B stands for. But really it's an accrediting body for laboratories. And then we are under a forensic laboratory list of policy and procedures that we follow.
And you follow, is that that policies are based off like out of the whole government, or is that based off your county?
It's based internationally, mostly to laboratories and not by the government. The government doesn't give those accrediting documents. It's a separate accrediting body.
Okay.
But so Hennepin County Crime Lab is accredited, Minneapolis Crime Lab is accredited, Minnesota BCA is accredited, and Anoka County is accredited. So we all have the same standards that we meet.
Okay. Now, you as a detective, you know, going back to that time, is there a case that really haunted you or like really put an imprint in your memory that you would feel comfortable of sharing?
As a detective, boy, you know, I think one of the most fun or interesting, I followed a gal. She had committed a theft, and I'm not even really sure how we got this case. I think she had started stealing lawnmowers up in the metro at Menards, somewhere up here. And anyway, she had stolen a lawnmower, like a $6,000 lawnmower from a fleet farm down in Rochester.
Okay.
And so I happened to be on call that day. Gosh, or maybe I'd put out, I don't remember. I'd put out maybe a cops alert on her, and Rochester PD, I think, had got her. And so then she was booked into jail down there. And then my partner and I at the time went down to Rochester, and they had a whole U-Haul type vehicle full of stolen merchandise. And she was operating in kind of like a theft ring, and it was really cool. We went to a different county to interview her. We worked with different judges to pull search warrants in those counties to make sure that we could search legally in those counties, and that was pretty cool.
So I always had a question of, so you go to a judge so does he create the search warrant, or do you create it and he just has to sign off on it?
Yep, you create the search warrant. So you have to have probable cause to be able to get a search warrant. So what you're doing when you write that search warrant is explaining to the judge your probable cause and the reason that you believe that he or she should grant you this.
And you have to list every probable cause you have, and it can't be superstition like I feel in my gut. It has to be like actual based off of evidence that you've witnessed or collected. Okay. Because I was always wondering, because like usually when I've always wondered, like, you know, when I went to the learning class, that when you have a search warrant, you have to create it. And I was like, well, how do you create something that the judge might find as superstitial or use as a personal use? And so can you use the search warrant as a personal use? Like you can't use it against like your ex-wife or your...
No, absolutely not.
No.
You would get fired for that.
Okay.
Yeah, there are very strict guidelines, you know, when establishing probable cause that need to be met. And the judges have no problem. If they are not comfortable and they don't think that you have provided enough details,
They
then
don't.
they will tell you. They'll say, like, I'm not granting you the search warrant and send it back to you.
Has it ever happened to you?
It has not happened to me, I don't think. Or if it did, maybe it was something minor. But I think that the times that I applied, it was pretty good to go.
Now, I want to talk about the supervisor. Like, what's, a lot of the questions I have are like, what's rewarding, what's not. But as a supervisor, do you get called out a lot to deal with people who are filming or like causing a scene to another, officer on duty?
Not so much in crime lab, no. I think nowadays you have to assume that you're on camera everywhere that you go. We all wear body cams as well, so I think that body cams help
prove
officers more than they hurt them. Most officers, I would say, are pretty used to operating under video nowadays.
Now, when did a lot of officers? Is it like a requirement you have to have a body cam, or is it like was that not a requirement before?
It was not a requirement before, but it is policy.
It is policy now.
Mm-hmm.
Since when was this policy?
I'm trying to think when Hennepin County got body cams. Maybe 2018, 2019. I think I got them right before I left crime lab to go to detectives. So they were kind of like just kind of getting out and becoming a thing. And when you go on certain calls, you should wear them. And now there's no question.
There's no question.
You need to have it on. Mm-hmm. If you have any interaction with the public, it needs to be rolling.
How does the camera work? I've always seen it like it's just like, is it sucked? Like, how does the whole thing operate?
It's magnets to your person, and then you always have it on. And so anytime then if you get into an incident, it'll go back 30 seconds. So those 30 seconds previous, it will go back, right?
Okay.
I'm trying to think, you're rolling around in your squad and you roll up on domestic out in the parking lot. You flip your lights on, so it has to be activated by either you pulling your gun out. There's an activation that is attached to our holsters that have an automatic activate. If somebody pulls their taser out and turns it on, that's an automatic activation. And then if you're in a squad car and you flip to position 3 for lights, that is an automatic activation. So you'll hear it, it'll beep, beep, and come on. You'll feel the buzz on your chest or on your body armor. And then you can turn it off, if everything's code 4 and say it's somebody's looking for directions. You stopped, you were rolling, everything's code 4, I'm going to give them directions. You can turn it off. If you make a traffic stop or you roll up on that domestic, you're going to let that roll the entire time. While you go back to your squad, while you run warrant checks, when you arrest that person, that is going to roll until everything is done.
Okay, so
until you take them to jail, right? Not for the interview portion.
No, I get that.
If you're the
and if you turn it off mid-stop, is that like a court-martial in like the military? Like you get fired, or do you get like how?
You'll get reprimanded for sure.
Okay, so what is a reprimanding? Like what is a consequence of you getting reprimanded?
Depending on who you are and what your history of, policy violations looks like. It could be a coaching session. We're going to just talk about what happened. It was an accident. You did it, this is maybe the second time you've done it. Then it is going to be a written reprimand. And then you just kind of climb the ladder. I mean, it could go all the way to days off, unpaid. It could be the final straw if somebody has been receiving discipline for a long time that's been documented. It could be, fireable depending on their history.
And when you're fired, is it true like you do have to give your gun and badge and then that's it? That's just
yeah, most sheriff's offices and police departments operate with a union.
Okay.
And so yes, you have the union, but yeah, when you're fired, it's like give me your gun, give me your badge.
That's it.
You're done. You can go on administrative leave. If they're kind of doing some investigation, depending on the severity of the accusations, they can put you on administrative leave or as a precautionary measure, and at that time they also relieve you of duty.
Okay.
So it just really depends on the seriousness of the consequences or violations.
Which makes sense. Now, I've always wondered, like, you are like up there. You're a sergeant, right? And you have to deal with the legal system. Like, is there in your complexities of the legal system happens? Like, the justice system is, as a lot of civilians see, is it is corrupt. But do you see it as not in a corruption way, but do you see it as a troublesome problem in your line of work?
Right now, I would say yes. There is not a lot of accountability for these criminals. And so I think that's why crime is at an all-time high. Violent crime continues to be high. These shootings, gang-related shootings continue to happen. There's just people aren't getting held in jail, and there's offenses that you can't go to jail for now, and um, that isn't doing anybody, including the criminals, any favors. So I think that the judicial system and police need to be on the same page and kind of get back to having bail for people and holding them in jail
And getting people, out off the streets so then innocent people can live their normal lives without having to fear going down the street.
Exactly.
Like, I've seen a lot. I mean, what would you say? Would you say Minnesota is a safe place to live?
Yeah, I think overall, yes.
Overall, okay. I mean, I know it's a bad question, but I'm just, as someone of concern of myself going into this line of work, would you say it's safe to be a law enforcement in Minnesota?
Most of the time.
Most of the
There's
time.
definitely a growing, it's a trend to attack cops and go after cops and shoot at cops and assault them. So, I mean, is it more dangerous than when I started in 2007? Yes, absolutely. It is. And I lived in St. Paul for years and years, and I am very thankful that I am not raising my children in St. Paul now.
Because of just how bad it has gotten.
So yes, it is much different.
I've always concerned myself because my father's a concerning person. He always cared about me and he cares about my family. My mom, however, is just worried, like petrified. Like if you were gonna tell a graduate's parents something like not to worry about, what would you say to calm them down?
Trust the training. You're going to receive a lot of top-notch training throughout being prepared to hit the street and be a police officer. And so, I mean, trust your training. Train hard, train seriously, and trust your training. You're given the tools that you need to do this job, and your mom and dad have to understand that. And that doesn't mean that your mom isn't going to be worried and that your dad isn't going to be worried, because I think even myself, my parents are concerned. I have a little brother who's a cop too. So I think that they're concerned about myself. My husband is in this profession, and my brother, all for the same and different reasons, depending on the work that we all do very different jobs. And so I think that's the nature of doing business. But they know you. They know how you're going to react. They're your parents. They raised you. Take the safety precautions, and I think, they won't always be like, we're not worried ever.
No,
they're going to be constant, or they're going to have their ear to the media. And, my gosh, I heard this or that.
When my mom heard about the two, bystanders that got shot down, close away a couple weeks ago, she looked at me like with terrified eyes. I'm like, Mom, I'm gonna be okay, but this is the danger that is gonna happen. Domestic violence is around, and I gotta serve. I gotta protect the people, even if you get scared.
Yep.
I want. Coming from someone like you who's had many years, I just wanted her to have reassurance that I'm going to be in good hands. Like, one of the things I've always wanted to ask was, like, how can you get a society to back you? Like, I see a lot of videos of, like neighbors or, like, bystanders helping cops in their time of need. Does that happen often? Like, how does a cop get the trust of a society?
I think by having integrity and being honest and having, being there, cops don't ever get called on your best day, and I think, citizens have to understand that. They're never going to somebody who's having the best day of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Cops are always responding, generally speaking, to an individual and a citizen's worst day of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they get this call all the time, and there's some mental health issues at stake.
Yes.
They are always going there on the worst day of their life.
Which is perfect, because I actually have a couple questions about that. You were talking about mental health. Like, I know it's a serious thing. How often you come in contact people with mental health issues, or like, do you think they're diagnosed with mental health issues?
Daily.
daily.
Mm-hmm.
What is like a severe line, like schizophrenia, bipolar? What is this? What is one you want to be a kind of wary of a danger?
I mean, I think there's so many diagnoses nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people suffer and they have multiple diagnoses. So I think really more so than mental health is people that are medicating with substances, with alcohol, or a combination of the above um, that already are suffering, but then things are escalated when they're trying to self-medicate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the combination of all of that can sometimes be really harmful, not only to those people that are suffering, but to others that are trying to help. Yep.
It makes a lot of sense because for a guy like me who's gonna be into this new era where I'm gonna be with people who are struggling with possible depression, possible schizophrenia, possible bipolar disease, a lot of other mental issues. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
know a couple because of some of my classes, but I mean, what kind of education do you think new officers should receive, and like what is like a possibility to like help people with, like how can you de-escalate an escalated situation?
Your words are you're either gonna click with that person or you're gonna be like oil and water with that person. And so I think we're in a era right now where younger people are having a harder and harder time having these face-to-face conversations, whether they be uncomfortable or comfortable conversations even, I think. And so I think if you can ever get your hands on those trainings, that we have actors come in that display certain behaviors of someone with those, all of those disorders that you mentioned and others.
Mm-hmm.
And our job in training is to talk them into getting help. Or whatever the end goal might be. Talk them into not hurting themselves, talk them into the ambulance, talk them out of their apartment, and whatever that scenario might be. But those, I mean, for someone who's been on for 18 years, I still think those are the most helpful. And when you're new, you feel so silly, like, I know this is an actor, and I know, like,
But
I don't,
you have
but
to take it
it's
serious,
so helpful.
and it's so
Yes.
helpful. Do you know a couple mental health issues that you wish you knew more of, or do you just wish you kind of just would understand what that person's going through?
I think through my personal experience and professional, I feel like um, I can talk to most people. So I feel like I'm never in a position to diagnose anything. So as long as I can talk to that person and somehow make that connection, and sometimes they are really personal connections that you have to, let them know, hey, one of my family members has totally been in this position before. Trust me. Let's figure this out. I want to help you just as much as you want help. So you really have to just have patience and to be able to talk to them.
I just, as someone of your stature with a high respect, I do have a deep respect for you as someone who's going to probably work for you in the future. Would you say that, people with like, let's say bipolar, and let's say like they're very calm 1 minute and then very escalated another second, how do you handle that situation?
You just roll with it. Keep yourself safe, of course. I mean, if you think you're going to get hurt, get out of there. No, I don't think anything is ever worth your safety or your partner's safety. So, I mean, yeah, just go with it and give them space if they need space. Try if you need to switch with somebody else. Your partner has a white cat and they have a white cat, right? Let your partner take over and talk about that cat. Try to make that connection, whatever that looks like. And if that means that you are handing over the baton to somebody else, be okay with handing over that baton. Hey, I can't make that connection with this person anymore. You're
gonna let you.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like a high situation to where like you could deal with it, but like it got too much to where you had to pass that on? Like, have you ever had a crisis like that, or you ever just like deal with it yourself and kind of like you can make that connection?
I think people that are really in crisis, you're going to be there for a long time, and so I don't know that I can't think of a time that I haven't been able to make that connection, but more so like we gotta just change out here. You know, like, hey, I'm gonna go grab a drink of water, and here my partner's gonna take over an hour or two, or just kind of like
Switch
you
it
work.
out.
Yeah, you know who you work with and what their limits are, and when they're starting to get short. You know, if they're giving short answers, and like, hey, let me talk to this person for a little bit.
Okay.
So,
Have you ever had a high situation before? Like I don't want to bring up personal, but let's say like a hostage. Not a hostage. That's a little serious, but like someone who's like, I don't know, on the roof.
not that I haven't. I haven't worked in a patrol capacity much. So I haven't had like somebody that's going to jump off a bridge. We get a lot of those in Minneapolis, a lot of people. So I personally haven't, like when they're dangling over. Um, so no, nothing I can think of off the top of my head.
I was just, as a, police officers, do you have people to talk to? Like, do you get requisite to like a therapist or someone to talk to instead of having to have it all in after you see like a bad day or like you had to do something that's pretty awful, as to saving your own life and taking someone else's. Do you get a therapist to talk to or like?
No, you don't. But I would say that in the last couple of years, officer mental health has really shifted. It used to be like just toughen up, get some thick skin, like,
Nowadays,
put up or shut up. Now it's become more. I think people are just better at checking in and hey, did you have a bad day? And even our department has now a tri-wellness unit, and I think they've been really proactive in like following the call load. Hey, I saw you went out to this car crash where somebody died. How are you doing? And then we have a lot of resources. We have a psychologist, on staff now. We have a group of chaplains, and it sounds like we have quite a few more psychologists coming on too. So I think that's really important, and I think that people getting help on their own has changed just in very recent years. That is a thing, and I think most people that have been around, after George Floyd, law enforcement lost a lot of people between that 15 and 20-year mark. And I would even say like 12 years on. 12 years to 20 years, which is a lot of experience, but we lost a lot of those people to PTSD. Because, again, it was just they're taking it all in, and not ever dealing with it. And sadly enough, they were forced to deal with it, which then they retired from their profession. So we've lost all these people that we will never replace their experience. So I think, nowadays people are way more proactive about mental health.
And I've always thought of mental health as like a joke, like because like my father, he's always not toughen up, but like with a small thing, he like tough up, build some big skin. Like my grandparents, that's what they grew up on, and it's very serious because growing in this time of age where I go to high school and like someone's like, oh, my mental health is, or I'm having a bad day, like I get the importance of understanding it, but when does it become like too much? Like do you ever get like someone who's like really just like constant like, oh, my day was this, my day was that, and always complain?
Always. Yeah. Oh, I mean, every place has them. I think negativity, misery loves company.
Yes.
And so I think that's every day people want to complain, but it's all, I think, I and my mental health and the way that I view the world and things in general, you are your biggest cheerleader.
Yes.
And so I think that people, and I always try to put that responsibility on people. You are in control. How you view something and how the takeaway from that, you are in control of what you take away. And obviously there are bigger things, right? That they are not in control of. But I would say in general, you are in control. And so sometimes I think in law enforcement, it's easy, nobody cares, nobody pays us, nobody cares if we're here. That you can get that circle spinning pretty quick. But then it's like, well, you're in control of it. So.
And that's not just one officer; it happens often with
in groups.
In groups.
Yeah, okay. I mean, but overall, I think most people are doing okay.
No, I feel so bad for you guys. I mean, constantly hounded by the news, constantly hounded by other people. It's a constant circle of being chased around with your tail tucked because
Right.
no matter even if you want to be good, someone else is going to make you the bad guy. You know,
Hmm.
and is has there been a moment where your personal beliefs like conflicted with your professional beliefs? Like, you ever had those moments on duties or like just in general? Have you ever had like off duty like moments?
Mm, I can't think of like anything specific where, I mean, even if you went to like mask wearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you went back to the COVID days where, everybody's got to wear a mask. It's
You have, cause,
policy. You
but
have to wear a mask.
but you didn't want to.
I
As,
didn't.
so
I
so
didn't do it.
put it out of work. So I'm gonna ask you out of work. Out of work, I want the out of work you. I don't want the officer Devin. I want the personal human being Devin. After all this time, what did you think about the mask policy? About
I hated
everybody?
it. I
Like,
hated it. And I did it, I mean, for a short, like going to Target, and it took me to see one person without a mask. And I was like, did they say anything when you walked in? She's like, no. I'm like, sweet. Took my mask off and never put one back on.
You're exact. That's why I think my mom likes you so much because she was the same thing. She's like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah.
Because during COVID, you know Mia. She has asthma. And she's very sick, and we were the most safest. I mean, we sprayed Lysol. One person would go. They would have. I'm like, we were like a hazmat family. And then by the years continued, I'm like, this is really stupid.
Uh-huh.
Even my mom was like, this is dumb. Like, why? What's the point?
Yep.
And as a law enforcement on duty, and it was standard by law, correct? Like you had to wear a mask on duty, or was it?
No, it was policy. It was the governor, and then it was like Hennepin County policy, I think, put it out there that you had to wear a mask.
And what if you refused to do it? You just couldn't go to work that day, or just what would happen?
They just would have to say something, and nobody wants to say anything to your face. So I never wore it. Because what are you going to say to me? Put a mask on? And I'm going to say no, and then we're not going to do that. Like,
All right.
So I just didn't do it.
Well, okay.
And then we, for a little bit, then people would send these catty emails. I saw Devin without a mask on. Oh, yeah, I saw you and you didn't say anything to me, so.
They were being sneaky behind your back.
Yeah.
They're being a peaky Tom, It's just,
yeah.
Do you ever feel like, personally between, do you ever feel like the job takes more of the family, or can you balance it out?
I feel like I have done a really good job until being on call every other week of my work-life balance. Being a crime scene investigator, I had the luxury of literally leaving my job at work every single day I left. I
Gotcha.
never had to think about it. I was on call in a different capacity that, like, I always had to have my phone and answer if there was a major crime scene. But now I think it's more, I have to have a backup to the backup to the backup, right?
Okay.
So being on call every other week, I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And so I always have to know what my options are, depending on if my husband is at work or at home, and what time of day it is. I'm always running scenarios in my head. Like, if I get that call now, what am I going to do? So.
As your family, I mean, we know your family. Your family is all law enforcement. You're your baby brothers, you are, and your husband. What's it like having a full, black and blue family?
Yeah, it's something I would have not ever imagined. I think that both of my parents could probably speak to that too, that they never would have guessed. But I think we have a really supportive family, and we're very fortunate that the majority of our family, I would say even people that don't agree with everything, but I would say overall, everybody is very, very supportive of what we do.
Now, what does your husband do?
He is a canine handler for Hennepin County.
I'm going to go right along with him.
Yeah, you might be deaf by the end of the day.
Dog
Thor barks in his ear a lot.
No,
but
I do have to ask. I'm not, I couldn't have asked your husband this, but and he brings that dog home. He's part of the family. Is he a good dog, or is he?
He's a great dog. We've had Thor now, or he's run Thor for 4 years. My big kids were 2 and 3. So 5 years probably he's run Thor. And so right when he got him, it was totally crazy. Thor was a lunatic, and I was like, this was a horrible idea. He came over from Czechoslovakia. He knew no English.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't tell him no till he went to school. So I mean, we had like, I don't know, 6 weeks where you couldn't tell this dog no, and he was huge. He was like a bull in a china shop. And now he is great. I mean, he's our house dog for the most part. He's always out. We just got a kitty, and he's great with the cat. So yeah, he's home with us all the time, and he goes to work. And when he's at work, he knows that it's work. And when he's home, he knows it's home. So Keith has done a great job training him. However, I think it's kind of not always dependent on the handler, but the dog's personality too.
So what kind of dog is he?
He's a purebred German Shepherd.
Woo! So, he's got a bite.
Yeah, he does.
And so, do you keep the dog, or like when they retire, do you just have him as a pet, or do they go to a different like house?
Nope, he will be our dog. I think there's a 4-year commitment that my husband had to make, and after those 4 years, anything that happens, then he can keep him. Okay. If Thor, had a medical out on a retirement early, he would still be our dog. Okay. And my husband's close enough to retirement now that he'll probably just run Thor through the end of his career, and they'll retire together.
How long has your husband been doing law enforcement?
He has been for 22 years.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a nice retirement. And you're still going to go? You're not going to retire?
Yeah, no, I am younger than him, and I have 18 years in this year. So
that's not terrible. Yeah. I mean, okay, back to your personal side. Do you enjoy the line of work? Like, is this like something you would just do, like you would just do every day if you could?
I really enjoy crime scenes. I do. I feel like I have the opportunity to use my brain all the time. I don't really ever operate in autopilot, and so I think that that's good. And I enjoy crime scenes, and I enjoy the people that are a part of my team too. They're a really awesome group of people.
You're just like, so you're the boss. So you have a boss above you, but you're the boss of everybody else. So they come to you for like, what do they come to you for?
For everything, advice on reports. I check myself and my partner review all of their reports. Personal issues, personnel issues, equipment needs.
And you just handle all of that.
Yeah, pretty much anything you can think of.
But you also get to go onto the crime scene, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What is it? So you have to bring like a gloves, boots, and booties because you want to be non-contaminating the crime scene. And is there ever a time to where you just kind of wish you weren't there that day? Like, you ever had a crime scene like that, or it's just part of the job?
I mean, for me, I guess those days that I wish I wasn't there, I am glad I was there so that I could help get justice for those victims. Because I mean, there's been some really crappy days, but overall, I think that our job is to get justice for the victim.
Which is like, a lot of people who watch, a lot of my classmates watch like Law and Order, a lot of, other shows, and as people who like don't understand, like, we watch a lot of, me and my family are very murder enthusiasts. My sister freaks me out because she's like, she's been watched almost probably every murder show. She's like, now I know how to do a perfect murder. I'm like, great, great. I got to sleep with an eye open, but. As someone who, as detectives, it's gotta be a stressful job, dealing with that constantly. And it just, as someone in your stature, does it get to you time to time, or?
I think it gets to everybody. I think I personally have a pretty good self-care routine. I take good care of myself, and I am very routine and very disciplined, and I would worry if I wasn't that person. So for me personally, I think that keeps me motivated. It keeps me sane. It keeps me, clear-minded, which is important. And my kids too. I always think on my worst day with my kids, I'm still thankful, that I can be a part of their lives. Because again, we see everybody on their worst day, So sometimes I think like, whatever. Like my baby's not sleeping and I've been up all night. It's like, even on their worst day, I'm still thankful for it, So I think keeping a good mindset is important for me.
Which is true. Now, I do have to talk on a personal level. You worked through, 2020 and the whole George Floyd incident and the whole conundrum after that, what did you feel after the government decided that they were going to defund the police?
I mean, like, I think defund, right? You're going to take
Mm-hmm.
money away. Okay. Whatever. I don't, at this point in the state of Minnesota, I don't think that it's, yeah, I don't think that it's a money thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lack of support, really. And our current governor, our attorney general, and it's the trickle down effect. Everybody who has not supported law enforcement, that takes a toll on law enforcement. And that's, you know, I was reading an article just the other day that said that assaults on officers is up in Minnesota only 160%.
I've witnessed a lot because I mean, YouTube. I mean, as a kid, YouTube is really like entertainment. You know, I'm as someone who wants to be law enforcement. I saw like a lot of people coming out with like people just stop like let's say your traffic stop, and all of a sudden another car pops up and dude's gonna carry a hatchet or try to harm you, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden like it's crazy to me how these people have just turned on a switch to like now harm the people that are trying to protect you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do you think it's like towards like my parents classify it as an agenda, as your personal stuff. Do you also
Mm-hmm.
believe that this is like a agenda that some people are trying to pass to make you guys look like the worst bad guys to support their political cause?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it's part of the plan. Yeah. So an
Mm.
agenda, same
Same
thing,
thing.
but just saying it differently. So yeah, I do, and it's really unfortunate because I think they, right, they being the people that don't support police and don't vote in support of police and don't raise their children to have respect for police,
Mm-hmm.
they have seen nothing yet. And I think that that's the scariest part is that we lost a lot of cops. We're down, I mean, something like 1,600 officers in the state of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And that we haven't seen this trickle down effect yet. There's going to be days with less cops than that
Mm-hmm.
still. We are merely at the beginning, and hopefully the pendulum swinging back
Mm-hmm.
to where we are starting to support cops again, and our leadership is starting to see the importance in that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still losing people, and
No.
there's still,
Well,
cops are
like,
still being assaulted and
well,
shot at
yeah.
and killed in the line of duty.
Well, Pittsburgh, like Chicago, Pittsburgh, a lot, like even hell, San Francisco's turned into one of the most dangerous places to be in law enforcement.
Mhm.
And as you can see that Pittsburgh, passed the whole 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. law. Can you explain to me like what happened there? Like why is that by shortage or is that just because they were defending? Because like I'm worried about you in Hennepin County having the same thing as Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
as in your department now stopping calls that
Mhm.
could be life threatening.
Right.
You know.
So, and I actually, until I read those questions, I had not heard that. I'm not surprised to hear that, though, because there just isn't enough people. And the
Mhm.
people that are working still are working so many hours. And I think, too, it's our generation. It's my generation to, like, work, right?
Mhm.
Work, which isn't good mentally. And it's
Mhm.
not good physically. It has, it's not good for anybody. And so I think you can't have these people just working there. And when you're short bodies, you're short bodies. So I think, as crazy as that sounds, I don't think they're the only ones that have done that.
So
I think that
do you
there's
think-
agencies in California as well.
So do you think your department's going to do that, or do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think we're at that critical of staffing level.
Or even funding, or even just resources.
Yeah.
You think you're going to be able to stay stable throughout the next couple of years?
I think so. Yeah.
Now, do you ever have a conflict between, as a supervisor, do you ever get conflict between, other people's in society or the communities you come help with, or do you ever get someone that really stands out and just be like,
You always have people that you have to deal with a complaint, I guess. And in crime scene, they aren't generally coming from the community. They're generally coming from like somebody else in another agency. But yeah, you have those people that are just full of piss and vinegar. And again, it comes back to just being able to talk to them and explain your policies. And you could explain your policies and talk to them and give them all the reasons that X, Y, and Z happened, and they're still not going to be pleased. and they're just going to come at you like that. And there's days, and I think that, patrol officers could speak to that too. There are times that you just aren't going to make anybody happy.
No, of course not. As going back to like the law enforcement, you see it. You see it. Everybody just want to start a fight with someone, and then you want to see someone because there was a speech made in 2007 about the policeman, by Paul Harvey, who was like, the policemen are always going to be someone who's going to be targeted. They're always going to be the guys who are going to be the ones who are going to be the most strict on you, the most people who are going to be the most strict against the community, and how they're held up as the highest respected people in society. And I see it as kind of a problem, not just on a civilian part, but as a law enforcement officer, because is someone who has to deal with people who are out to get you 24/7 nowadays, because it does feel like that. It does feel like people are out to get you. Does that get to you? Like, not just you, but into your department. Do you think people are feeling the effects of that?
Oh, I think absolutely. And again, I think it's, you still have to be able to go home to your safe place and reel your mind, whatever that looks like for you, is getting out of that funk and back into your normal personal life, whatever that looks like. So yeah, I think, but people are getting worn down. It's exhausting. And being in uniform every day, and back to, we're so short, so these guys and gals are working all the time, and so it's like, how do you, when you're getting 6 hours off and then you're coming back and you're wearing that uniform and being attacked, you have a couple bad days in a row, 2 days bad days in a row, that can seem like a lot. And so yeah, our law enforcement family is suffering.
Do you ever, as a person, do you ever, just want to get these people just a day off? Like, you ever, invite some of your coworkers, some of the people you work with over and just, want to talk or just have a nice outing to help them out?
We try to, and again, everybody's so busy outside, so we try to, I think, take care of them while they're at work, make a meal for them, try to pick up an overtime shift. My partner and I really try to pick up that shift if we can. If we know, hey, Chase is busy at home, or he's got X, Y, and Z going on, or we knew you wanted to go to the gym, or whatever that looked like for you. We have a guy that does bowling every Tuesday. Oh. So it's like, I'll stay the 4 hours. I'll stay and you can go do your thing. Her and I try to be really good about knowing our people enough to be able to have those conversations with them, and then be able to help them how we can.
Yeah, it makes sense. But do you ever? So when you get a partner, is it the same sex partner, or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
You just have to be professional.
Yeah. And my partner, I've never been in a 2-squad. Usually you roll around solo. And then, so my partner now is my assigned partner, and I've worked with her for many years. But you never ride with her. Never ride with her.
But as a cop, instead of a detective or a sergeant, do you have to have a partner with you?
No.
No, not anymore.
It depends on the calls that you're going to. Generally, I would say if somebody's going to be the primary, there's always going to be someone else rolling that way. And depending on the call, a domestic, for example, you don't ever respond alone. So even if you don't have a partner in your area, you call an agency, where we're in Albertville right now, but you could call Monticello. Hey, I need somebody to roll this way before I approach this house. So you have to. I would say ideally you would want a partner everywhere you go. Yeah. Nowadays, but our CSIs go out to crime scenes all the time by themselves.
And you're not worried about their safety at all.
Oh yeah, there are times. Their safety is number one. If they're at a shooting and they can hear a shooting going on a block away, it's best they get out of there as fast as they can. Working crime scenes is different because we're licensed peace officers and having a gun on our hip. We always want another agency there with them. If Brooklyn Park's the one that called, we would like a Brooklyn Park cop to stay.
Because he knows the area.
Yeah, and when you're digging in that wall over there and your back is out and your gun's exposed, somebody can come up right behind you and attack you. And so we want them to be safe. So if they ever feel unsafe, we say just pack up your stuff and head out. But that's different than patrol. That's crime scene and what they do.
Which makes sense. As someone who would really like to, go from the 3 years to the 6 years to then, go year after year after year after year. Does it, your husband's 22 years, you're 18 years. How long has your little brother been in?
He's been in, probably 7.
So he's What would you call him? Like a newbie still, or do you think he's like getting to like?
He's getting experience. I would say that he's getting experience. He's seasoned. You know, like we say in investigations and crime scene, about 3 years you're gonna feel comfortable. With pretty much you could throw anything at that person and they should be like know the answer or feel comfortable doing that.
And you have to get reassessed every year to keep that license, correct? Or do you, once you're hired, or once you have that career, once you have that diploma that says I can be in law enforcement,
you get your post license.
Your post license.
And so your post is renewable every 5 years, I believe. And that is your agency. Your agency is responsible for renewing that, but you still have to know the credits that you need to be able to get your post license renewed. Working for as big of an agency as I do, they keep track of that.
They keep track.
If you worked for Albertville, Minnesota, and it was not covered by Wright County, but they had their own police department, likely you would be responsible for keeping track of those hours.
As someone, not as someone, but as someone who's part of a community who, we see a lot of cops. I mean, we see a decent amount. Do you think it's good to have people, constantly out, like cops doing 12-hour shifts, or what does an average shift look like?
I think 12s are great. Coming from somebody who's worked 8, 10s, and 12s, I like 12s. 12s gets you 3 months more off a year than working an 8-hour day in a year. And if you figure you're working an 8-hour day and you have an hour commute, whether it's a whole commute or you're getting in the shower at 7 a.m., you're eating breakfast, and you're driving to work for 20 minutes, and you get to work and you log on. You still have the hour on the beginning and the back end of your shift. So that is now about a 10-hour day. So I always think if you're going for 10, you might as well go for 12. You might as well work 12, and then you get more time off.
Gotcha.
Because your work day is still a work day, whether it's an 8 or a 12.
And you work. So do you work Monday through Friday, or do you have you work Monday, you get Tuesday off, you work Wednesday, Thursday, you get Friday off?
I right now work mostly a Monday through Thursday. Having a baby at home, I have kind of a floating day and a really laid-back supervisor as far as like what days I take off. And I was working weekends, but that gets kind of hairy. So right now I'm usually Monday through Thursday.
Because you want those 3 days with your darling babies.
I do, yeah. But also I like working weekends. Just being a sergeant, I'm responsible for being present at a lot more things that occur only during the week. But like my husband works a 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, 3 off, 2 off, 2 on, 3 on, 3 off.
Oh, yeah.
So every other week or every 2 weeks, his schedule mirrors, and that's what I worked prior to being a sergeant and a detective, and so I like that because then you work every other weekend, you get a 3-day weekend. So it's all. My brother has worked like a 5-2 or a 5-4, where he used to work 5 days on, 2 days off. 5 days off, 2 days on, and he said those 5 days would get hard. He said 5 12s is a lot.
Oh yeah. Well, you're working probably close to 60 hours. I've on a civilian side, I probably put in, in 2 weeks, I probably put in about 150 hours just by doing landscaping. And as a cop, you just do difference between being outside all day with a t-shirt and a little mist sprayer once in a while, and then being in 40 pounds of gear in an all-black uniform. Or dark blue, and in a hot sun. That's gotta suck.
Right. Yeah.
When a lot of people compare themselves to how hard it is, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you don't have the hardest job, buddy. You're just in air conditioning, cool, and these guys are driving everywhere. Have you ever driven outside of Hennepin to deal with a case? What was your farthest case you had to deal with?
I was up at Cold Spring. When Tommy Decker got shot, I went up there and used a camera system to map that crime scene. When I was in detectives, we kind of touched in COVID when you weren't supposed to be leaving or going anywhere. We went to all 4 corners of the state, my partner and I, for different cases. I'm trying to think. Yeah, in a crime lab capacity. That's about the furthest. I was recently, Rosemount. So not too far.
And have you ever had to take one? Have you ever been called out of state?
Not that I can think of. No, I don't think so.
How long have you and your partner been working together?
Her and I were partners in crime scene. She's been in crime scene, I think, a year longer than I have, as a CSI, and then she's been a sergeant about 9 months longer than I have. So she's probably got a year and 9 months on me.
So how do you rank up? Do you have to like take a quiz or test, or do they just check you by being noticed?
For a sergeant position, you interview for it.
You interview for it, and then to rank up to be like, how do you become like, if you wanted to be like a chief? How is that process?
There are education requirements that come with that. Right now in our department, the education requirement is a 2-year degree.
Okay.
And so we have people ranging from 2-year degrees to master's degrees, but really at the level kind of that I'm at in the years of experience, a lot of it's experience based.
And would you ever take a chief's job?
I would have to get some more education. I personally have a 2-year degree in law enforcement right now, so I'd have to go get a 4-year. And I think most chiefs now, they want them to have a master's for most metropolitan agencies.
And you don't want that.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot. And having 3 little kids right now, it's like, I mean, I don't really have time for that.
No, true.
Not saying that it's not important. I just
no.
I can't prioritize.
As a mom, as a law enforcement agent, it's got to be a lot. So, what is the home life of a? Do you leave work at work, or do you take work sometimes to home?
Sometimes I have to take work home because I'm on call every other week. So there's a lot of times that I'm taking phone calls, emails. My on-call weeks, I have, time cards are due. You have to be responsible for emails. So I think now it's becoming more of a mix, and my kids, my oldest at least, is on to a lot. Sometimes I try to talk in code, and then when you talk in code, then they pick up on it more. And so it's like, oh, did that guy kill his wife? It's like, no. How'd you even hear that? I don't even think I said guy, gal, and killed in the same sentence, but somehow she knows exactly what's going on. And so yeah, I think, and it depends on the time of day. If I'm going in at bedtime, then usually they're like, oh, don't go, stay home. When I go in the middle of the night, that's ideal, because then I can just be gone. I can slip out the house.
And then you get there when they wake up.
Be home. And so
I cannot be a mom like that. Like, even if I could, I mean, I don't want to be that whole talking to that kind of, part of the society right now. But I mean,
I pick up what you're saying. Yes.
It's just, as a mom like that, you gotta be exhausted.
It's busy. That's for sure. I feel like everybody's not made for it. So my day generally starts at 3:30 a.m. and it ends, hopefully by 9. So that's my goal every day, is to be in bed at 9.
I get it. My mom, I feel so bad for her, because she has to worry about me. I'm gonna become a cop, and she's a business owner and everything. If you had to change career, I asked this question before. If you had to change a career, what would that career be? Like, what would your next biggest career change be?
Gosh, that's such a hard question. I feel like if I could do it, I would. So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Like,
would you get a safer job? Like, I don't know. Or you feel that rush of danger and that adrenaline rush? Would you instead of being police officer, you just go be like, I'm gonna be a firefighter?
I don't know, because I also don't like to go. I don't like fires. Like, I definitely would. The chances of me going in a burning building without having to rescue someone are slim to none.
you do it as a job. You're like, personally, you're like, I don't want to do that today.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I have no idea. Maybe be a nurse, but I always think I'm probably not smart enough to be a nurse. Nurses are really smart. So that would probably be like a labor and delivery nurse.
All right. Well, obviously, because you have a 1-year-old, you like babies, of course. Definitely that job. I will, not because I'm a child. I like babies, but it's just more like you can see that no matter how many times you save the person, having someone who's just given a life to someone, that's got to be a different feeling. As a personal level, have you ever had to make a decision, like a life altering decision on the job?
No, I have not.
Never once?
No. I was almost, 99% of the time I'm there when they're dead. So that has already been done.
My mom's going to kill me for that question. But, it's a hard, because mental health, going back on the mental health, since this is a psychology, do you think I've been on top of this topic a lot, during this whole, session, that you get a lot of officers that do make that decision that's meant to protect them, their comrades, or bystanders, and also bystanders, protecting them. And it's just, do you ever get people within your department that are just like struggling after when they have to do that?
I think that you could say that most people, there's a very small percentage of cops that are put in the position to fire their duty weapon. And I think that everybody who is put in that position deals with it somehow. They have effects from it. And so I think that and unfortunately more and more people are being put in that position every day.
Well,
And so that group is growing.
it is growing,
but it's still, I would say, very, very small.
As people, to my classmates who are probably going to be wondering, why I talk about it, is because when it comes to mental health, you have to worry about not just everybody involved, but also the people you're, going to probably arrest or trying to find. With these cases, I just have the curiosity. Have you ever had to deal with a married couple?
As far as
like a case, not like case-wise, but like you ever had to like tell a married couple like, hey, such and such is still alive though, but like, can you give us insight? Like, you ever had to give like two completely opposite answers from different people?
No, I've given death notifications, that somebody has passed away that they love. And then I've seen like wives kill husbands and husbands kill wives, but not ever like, and I guess maybe a child of a couple, probably a death notification, or a death of that child is something that I would have been present for.
And that hits hardest because you have children.
Yeah, I think anytime you have a case that you can relate to on a personal level, those are really hard, and you just never know. It can sometimes be, that you have a 7-year-old son who's in first grade too. It can be the pajamas that person has on. It can be that your dad drinks the same coffee as that dad, and that dad has 3 kids too. You just don't know where that personal connection is going to be made.
But it will possibly happen. It
does.
I
think
and it does
without
hit.
a doubt.
I feel so bad for the detectives or just the officers that have to deal, because they're gonna have a personal connection to it some way, somehow, and it's hard to talk about, isn't it? Because it's a serious thing. A lot of people, like when I heard about the funding the police and the whole riots and the downtown riots, and it's just, how do you think you should have a way to contact the people, not just like people who have gone through loss, but also contacted others in the communities that we're not out to be the bad guys, and we're out to really just be there to help instead of having a target on our backs.
Yeah, and I think now I can speak for Hennepin County. We have a community engagement team, and so they have been super proactive in that. And our sheriff, she does a really good job of putting all the positive that the sheriff's office is doing into our community, whether it be via social media, whether it's her going to these events, or her going and bringing the team or sending the team. So I think that she has done a really good job of trying as hard as she can to put that positive spin on law enforcement. So like I said earlier, I think that pendulum is starting to swing, but it's slow. And it takes leaders like our sheriff that see the importance and know the importance.
Like you talked about earlier. I just want to go over on it because this will go to my entire class. Just a lot of them, being with these classmates, I got to know them one-on-one. I got to meet them, talk to them, make friends with them. And a lot of them are very differentiated feelings. Some are very pro, some are very con, and there are conflicts. And as someone who wants to be someone who can handle conflict, but also like put out their own views, through not your own. I want the personal side of you. How do you see the conflict issue? Like, would you ever kind of step in and be like, "That's not what they are"? Like, you see a riot outside your door. Like, how would you handle that personally?
As far as like expressing my true opinion, I think that I can sit and speak my opinion to somebody and really try to sway them if I wanted. But I also think that, putting responsibility back on that person too. They have to be willing to hear, why law enforcement is not the bad guy. Why us wearing a uniform, we're not the bad people. That we have to work together if we're all going to, get behind law enforcement and get crime under control and get our communities back to functioning the way that they were prior to 2020. I think that it has to be a group effort. Law enforcement can't just like crush it day in and day out, trying to hit the community and tell everybody how great we are. It has to be a mutual.
It has to be a mutual kind of like instead of being forced into it. Because I mean, I don't want to hit on the LGBTQ community, but I mean, it is a hard topic because you see that often to where like they're forcing their views, and then you're forcing, because I mean, it doesn't relate to the topic. You have someone who's trying to force your views onto someone else, then you're gonna have someone else going to do the same thing, and then it's going to completely, counteract.
It all gets locked.
It's all get locked in a circle. And do you think that's a domino effect with law enforcement agents? Like you see something happen, then someone puts it on social media, and then do you think it's a backlash back to like, your department or you personally?
Right. And I think that the downfall with social media, I think in many ways, social media is a horrible thing. But it can be good, back to the community policing, right? It can be good. You can broadcast all the good. But then, too, when you're getting these snippets of videos, you're not ever seeing the 20 minutes before that.
No, you're not.
You're not ever seeing the 20 minutes after.
30 seconds.
Yep.
Like on YouTube.
And everybody's so quick to judge. And what are they doing? That's wrong.
Well,
it's like, hold on. Let's see the whole video. Let's hear the whole story. And I think that people just need to get away from that quick to judge.
Well, when I saw a short, YouTube, a lot of people like TikTok shorts, Instagram shorts. This YouTube short popped up when this lady was in all black in a lawn, a police officer accidentally hit her because she illegally crosswalked because it wasn't her turn, and the cop, on the other side laughed a little bit, but it was just that 15 seconds. It wasn't the whole story, but it was just that 15 seconds, and he got reprimanded and fired. Because people outlash. Is that really based off of just the whole quick to judge, like you were talking about earlier, or is that more or less you have to keep it professional, even if something like that happens?
Yeah, you have to keep it professional.
Because
nowadays, you had better be minding your P's and Q's all the time. It's changed,
My mom's been saying the same thing, like, got my P's and Q's on this job. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna do something stupid like that. Like, even noticing that my camera's still recording, you still have to like not say things you want to say, like the intrusive thoughts issues, where it's like I see a lot of law enforcement have PTSD, struggle with depression and notices, and it gets into them, and it just happens. Accidents will happen.
For sure, and you have to just own up to them. Be honest. Hey, you're right. I said something stupid.
Instead of just leaving and dealing. Like, do you ever think that do you think that's like not a coward way, but do you think that's like instead of handling the problem, they just want to leave it be?
As far as like something like saying something stupid on camera.
Yeah. Do you think they are? Because a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot where a lot of law enforcement officers are now like leaving their stations or wanting a transfer or basically just taking an early retirement.
Yeah, a lot of people want to.
Even when they just make a small mistake.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't want to. I mean, it's the mob. They don't want the mob to come after them, and that's then that's more stress. It's not just stress on them; it's stress on their family, on their house, on their assets, things like that. So I think, a lot of that comes from that, what we experienced in 2020 and 21, where
the whole
they would
crisis.
come out to your house and they would burn the city. And so I think people, to prevent things like that,
you just have to take a precaution because
protect themselves. And it is what it is.
Has that ever happened to you, where you had the mob come after you?
No.
Even through personal life, nothing.
Not that I can think of. No, I haven't.
No. Do you wear a badge everywhere you go, or do you don't wear a badge at all?
No. I mean, when I'm in uniform, I do. I wear a full uniform every day.
Even when you're not on duty, you don't wear one.
No. I don't identify at all as a cop.
You just be like, I'm Devin. I'm a mom. That's just you. Then when you're on the
job, I'll
like,
step in if something happens. Of course, I'll step in.
You'll step in.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to do that in civilian life? You had to step in.
Man, I think one time I helped chase a guy down when I was at a movie theater one time. And
wait, here?
No, this was way long long ago in St. Paul when cops were still respected, but this guy ran with handcuffs on, and we helped chase him down. But other than that, I don't think I've ever identified myself as a cop and reacted. I would say sometimes as a cop, especially as a mom, I almost always have some of my kids with that I can be a really good witness.
Yes. Yes.
I don't even have to ever identify myself. I
No,
can give a really good account of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever, with kids, taking them out, do you ever feel a little uneasy, going to places on a personal note? You don't have to answer that,
I think, there's certain things, being a crime scene investigator, being a cop, there's certain things that I feel like I probably overreact to that most parents maybe aren't as in tune with.
Well,
but,
you take on more stress than most parents. I gave my mom and dad a run for their money time to time, but I mean, that's because, I'm 18, I'm making dumb mistakes. I mean, as someone who's actually quite on a target, that is a target, that has, kids, I can see that stress builds up and, as they get older. Do you think, I'm asking it personally you, because you have good ties with my family. And both of you talk a lot. Do you ever think, have you ever had to step in as to be like someone, to be at the receiving end of someone else's problem on a personal note, than as as a detective or as a sergeant? You ever had to, like, as a friend, you ever had to go to a friend and be like, I'm here for you, and they just lay it all down?
Oh yeah, I think many times in my life I've been in that situation. But I think, I want people to trust me, not only because I do what I do, but I want them to trust me even more importantly on a personal note. I think I'm a trustworthy person, not just because of my job, but because of the person that I am.
As a personal note, I just want to say that you for coming, because like my mom was like, hey, I'm like Dr. Devan. I'm like, I know her. Isn't she your friend that works? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. It's because when I told my mom and dad, like, I want to become a cop and I want to join the military, they really were like, my mom looked at me like, okay, if you're serious about this. And I had, do you ever have your family tell you, like, you shouldn't do this?
No. My parents have been nothing but supportive.
What about extended family?
Yeah.
I'm having that issue right now.
Extended family?
Yeah.
My grandma, I think, was pretty apprehensive. She passed away in 2014. And I think by the time she had passed away, she was okay with it. But we had a lot of really good conversations. Yeah. She thought of things I never would have thought of, which she was older. She had way more life experience. So looking back,
I'm having those talks with, like, my grandpa is very supportive. He was supportive when I joined when I enlisted in the military, or trying to. And when my parents were, when I told them I want to be a cop, a lot of my family was very supportive, but they gave me ideas to think about, And it's just, would you, as someone who just, like, let's say I joined the Hennepin County, and I get a job, and then I have to. Do you work? Like, would I work with you on a case? Like, how would I contact you if I need a detective or like a sergeant or supervisor to come down to, like, a house disturbance that went badly?
Then just on the radio.
On the radio,
Yep.
Like, how would I want to get as much experience since I have the time with you. How would that work? How does that work?
So I have a call sign.
Okay.
I have a call sign and a badge number, and your call sign is what they call you out on the air as, and then I monitor a specific channel. So, like, Hennepin County, we are always on the North Main, the sheriff's office, I should say, is always on that main. And so really you just have to dispatch on that main, and my call sign's 1550, and that will I listen to my radio all day, every day, and so that kind of
Do you have a police radio in your car, like in your civilian car?
No.
No, you don't. You don't have.
No.
Is that just like weird people do it?
Yes, very strange people do that, and I would say that nowadays that's probably against some policy. That is not encouraged.
That's not a. So even if you wanted to have it, like, you just want to tune into it and just be like.
No. And back to that work-life balance. It's not good to listen to the radio all the time. It's good to listen to just music and your kids bickering in the back seat.
So your husband is K9 unit, and then you do this. Is he working today?
He is not working today.
So both of you have today's off. Do you guys match each other's days off?
We don't. He is working my on-call weekends, and he is off my off-call weekends. So it actually works really, really well. But then my on-call weekends, he's working 6 to 6, right? So then we have the kids at home, and so it's kind of a back to the backup to the backup to the backup.
It's kind of, yeah, I mean, I get it. So
you just always have to have a plan in place.
Do you work with your little brother?
He works for Brooklyn Park Police, and so I work with him in the sense that, like, he's a customer. We serve their department as a crime scene team, but we don't work together.
Do you ever, like, check in on him, though? Just be like, you just drive up in your own squad car?
I listen for him on the air. I know his call sign, and I monitor the channel that he's on. I'll hit him up every once in a while.
Keep an eye on him.
Yeah, it's good. He works in Brooklyn Park, and Brooklyn Park's busy, and there's there's a lot of dirt balls over there.
There is, but it's safe. That area is, I think, is safe. You know, a lot of when I became a cop, I wanted to study the most safest areas to work, and not the safest. I've learned downtown decent.
Yeah.
Anywhere past downtown,
yeah.
I won't touch it. Like my dad looked at me one day. He's like, "Where do you want to work?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm thinking about moving states." He goes, "Probably a good idea."
Maybe one that has a little bit more support, right?
Oh, yeah. You know, going back to the fund, you know, I want to table back into funding because there's some questions I didn't agree with because, the funding the police was basically not a governor, but a government idea. But did it come down to the governor as to pass it?
Did it come down to him to pass it? I mean, yes. I don't know that I can't think of anything specific that passed per se, other than like taking money away, which again, back to money is money.
Money is money, but you need money to support.
He openly does not support law enforcement, and I think that's unfortunate for him.
Are you gonna vote for him next year?
I don't know that I voted for him ever, and I don't know that will change.
As a law enforcement, do you have to be a persuasive persona or person in a community to be like, can you use that power to persuade people to change the view? Like, let's say you want to vote out a chief. Could you persuade your community you work with to vote your chief out?
Well, the chief is it's not an elected position. The chief is an appointed position.
Okay.
The sheriff is an elected position.
And you can vote the sheriff out. Now, is that people vote him out, or can you vote him out?
You as a worker or you as a citizen? As a worker, you have no control over who your sheriff is if you don't reside in that county. Right? You have to be a citizen of that county to elect that sheriff.
Okay.
So like I live in Wright County, so I elect the Wright County sheriff. But I work for Hennepin County.
Which kind of boggled me because we've seen you around in Wright County. I was like, I thought you would work for Wright County. Would you ever want to work for Wright County, or is you just...
Right now, I think I have a really good career in Hennepin. I know Hennepin. I know I've been there for a long time. So, no, right now I'm okay with what I'm doing.
But you would transfer in the future if you wanted to. It'd
have to be pretty appealing. In law enforcement, there's a seniority date. So my seniority date, I have a lot of seniority on people because I've been around for a long time. And so then if I was to transfer to a different department, that seniority date starts over. So like if I transfer today, my seniority date would be May or April, whatever date it is, April 13th of 2024. And so my date right now is February 1st of 2007. Okay. So no, it would have to be pretty appealing for me to transfer. Over. Yeah.
I mean, do you, on a personal note, do you think this is like I've been to this, like it's a fun job, it's a good career, and we dabbled about like changing careers, but would you go back into being a detective than forensics?
I would go back. Yeah, I think I was there for 2 years, and I think I still have a lot to learn. So yeah, I'd go back.
Do you what about forensics really drew you in?
Nothing is ever the same.
You always find something new.
Yeah, there's always people are gonna do something different. People I feel like can always be like, Devin, can you believe this? Yeah. Or like, you'll never guess what this person did. Try me. It does. I feel like it takes a lot to get me riled up. I feel like And once you think somebody has topped the cake, somebody else is going to do something crazier, stupider, or weirder, or whatever.
What is, other than finding a lady who just stole lawnmowers and appliances, is there like one that really was like the weirdest case, like a wild goose chase kind of case?
Well, there was one years ago that this guy and his gal, they lived together in a townhome, and he kind of led a transient life, but he talked to his brother every Sunday. And so his brother lived down in, I think, the Illinois area, and so he'd call his brother every Sunday and talk, no matter where he was, whether he was kind of moving or shuffling. And so he didn't talk to his brother on a Sunday, and his brother was like, hey,
they want to do a
called the gal, his girlfriend, hey, what's going on? Oh, you know what? He moved out. He moved out last week, and I dropped him off the Greyhound station, and he moved out. And so then he's like, okay. So the next Sunday rolls around, doesn't hear from him, calls the girlfriend again. She's like, yeah, I don't know. He's at the Greyhound station. I haven't seen or heard from him since. So the brother was like, something just isn't adding up. So he called the local police, and the local police went out there and talked to her. She was kind of hinky, not giving the greatest answers. So they were able to establish enough probable cause to serve a search warrant on this townhome. And so the girlfriend was there at the time, and they're walking through the townhome, and they find some of his clothes and some of his belongings, and they get out to the garage, and there's a brand new chest freezer. Like, the box is still there, and the chest freezer's brand new, plugged in, like, in the middle of this garage. And the detective goes, what are the chances Eddie's in the freezer? And pops the freezer open, and sure as shit, Eddie's in the freezer. And he's like, oh, there he is. So she killed him and wrapped him up nicely and put him in a chest freezer. And there
I've
was
seen a lot
Eddie.
of movies with those, like, they just bring a freezer. I thought it was just a myth. Like,
No,
it's a real thing.
Eddie was wrapped up in the freezer.
That's wild.
Yeah, she just stood there. She was just on the steps, and by the time we had gotten out there, and she was still just sitting there. Just no emotion. I'm like, what were you going to do with Eddie? I don't know what she had. But
when you have people with like that, where it's like no emotion, no remorse, it's a serious, like, there is something wrong.
Yeah, it was. And she wasn't like, shoot, I thought you wouldn't find him in the freezer.
No, she knew she was going to get caught.
Yeah, she was caught. But
do you ever have one, like, you're just like, kind of like, this was the stupidest crime ever? Or is it like, I just don't understand, like, your crimes, because this is a cool kind of concept that you get a guy in a freezer, you get someone stealing lawn appliances, and then you stack up, like, every day is different, like you said. Is there one you're just kind of like, not dumbfounded, but you're like super confused, but you still solved it?
Boy, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I think sometimes shootings can be hard. We do trajectory analysis, so we, measure the angle of which bullets hit walls and vehicles and stuff. And I think sometimes you're given the story, but then once you run some numbers or look at some things, it's like, oh, maybe it was over here. And then that's where it is. But I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
That was, to be honest, I think that was the weirdest. That'll be the coolest story I ever get to tell on a podcast where, like, I had a guy named Eddie in a freezer.
Yeah.
I've always imagined myself, like, not creepily, but like saying, like, I do want to find someone in a freezer, or I do want to see someone, stuck behind a new drywall, or you go up to an attic and he's just like plastered, like tied. It's like I'm like, I don't want to be like that wanting dude that's like super excited to see it, but like also you just want to be like, how can this be real?
Yeah, it can be crazy.
But I gotta say thank you for coming.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.